Chatterbaits are a great bait and a great technique, but the right rod and reel setup can take it from a good fish catcher to a great big bass snatcher. In this video, I'm going to share all the details on my ideal rod and reel chatterbait setup. Chatterbaits seem to catch bass year-round, and they have a propensity to catch big bass. So that's a technique that you definitely don't want to ignore, and you don't definitely want to have a substandard or a rod that's not really set up for chatterbaits. First off, there's two main trains of thoughts on chatterbait rods. Are you an angler that prefers fiberglass composite setups, or do you prefer a graphite setup? Me, I am not a fiberglass guy for my chatterbaits or any move baits or crankbaits or anything. I really don't love the feel of graphite. For me, as somebody that predominantly fishes grass and northern climates and things like that, I don't feel like I get the feel. I can't snap it out of grass as well, and just the way I fish, it doesn't work for me. Doesn't mean it's not a good option, doesn't mean it's not right for you and for other anglers. I prefer to fish a softer graphite rod for chatterbaits and moving baits like that. So if you were here hoping I was going to tell you that the 736 CB glass Dobyns rod is the best chatterbait rod ever and you should definitely go out and run and get it, this is not the video for you. Don't get me wrong, it's a great rod. A lot of guys have great success with it. They love with it. And for certain anglers and their mechanics and how they fish, it's a great rod. Also, personally, I don't feel like I need to spend over $250 for a good chatterbait rod. So I'm going to show you what my rod and reel setup right now. We're going to quickly run through this setup really quick, and then I'm going to dive into the details and give you a deep down breakdown why I'm selecting each component and why I like it. My main chatterbait rod is a Dobyns Sierra 734C, which is a 7-foot, 3-inch, labeled as a heavy action fast rod. But don't let that fool you. The Sierra 734 fishes a lot more like most other rods, medium, heavy, moderate action. Got that paired up with a Shimano SLX XT HG150, which is a 7.2-to-1 reel. So this rod and reel comes in right around $300, which is a good value, in my opinion, for a top-notch chatterbait setup. However, if this rod and reel breaks your budget, I'll save some options on the end, some substitutions that you can grab that'll still be really great chatterbait rods that won't break the bank. Also, there'll be links to all rods and reels, bait, line, and everything I talk about down in the description of this video below. My typical line setup, 17-pound mono or fluoro. Right now I got mono on it because this is what I had set up for the Watchtower River, fishing in the dirty down south around big cypress trees, shallow water, and things like that. But I'll adjust my line depending on what I'm fishing, and we'll talk more about that later. But most of the time I'm running 16, 17, 18-pound fluorocarbon and sometimes mono. Currently on this rod we got a 1/2-ounce jackhammer chatterbait, which is all chewed up, has gotten the paint beat off of it for catching so many fish and using it so long. And then on the back, a 4.5-inch bluegill colored Arsenal tactical minnow, which has been one of my top producers over the last 2 years as a chatterbait trailer. Now let's dive in and talk about each component in detail and why they're integral and important to the setup. Like I mentioned before, the 734 Sierra fishes a little different. In general, the Sierra has a more moderate, slower action, just by a little bit than the Cadence at the same price point, even so than some of the most moderate action Champions and Fury rods. Kind of think of it as if you're a Champion XP, I really feel like this rod has the tip or the slow action of a 733 XP married with the backbone and the power you need in the rear section of a 734. All the tip you need for great casting, working the bait, the action, accuracy, launching this bait out there, but all the backbone you need to drive it home and keep a big fish pinned. The other thing is you want a softer action rod that allows fish to get the bait in their mouth and slow you down just that split second so you don't bust their mouth open on a hook set. When a fish comes in, collapses on that bait, and you're pulling that blade free, you kind of want that slowness of the action and a little bit of stretch and a little bit of give so you get a chance to get that hook in their mouth and then drive it home without popping it out with such a jarring hook set. That ever so slight delay should increase your hookup percentage significantly. It's the same principle as the glass rods, but you're getting the feel of a graphite rod with a more moderate action that matches that of some of the composite options out there. It's important to have a parabolic style rod that has a bend that goes deep into the rod blank. That helps you catch more fish, land more fish, keep them pinned, and let the chatterbait really do what you want it to. Not to mention having a complete setup of rod, line, and everything that has just a little bit of give and a little bit of stretch and some softness is really good. It allows the chatterbait to really do what it needs to. the harder you pull this with the least amount of stretch and less amount of give in the whole system, the tighter that chatterbait's going to run. Whereas the softer the rod, a little more stretch in your line, it's going to allow that chatterbait a little more freedom down there, and when it does hunt or kick out, it's going to be a little more exaggerated. If you've got a stiffer action rod or a braided line with no stretch, you're going to limit the productivity of a chatterbait and limit its action, as well as you're going to potentially miss a few fish on that hook set. In the end, you really need to find a rod that fits you and your mechanics. This is just what works for me and how I like to fish. So when I'm fishing a chatterbait and I'm reeling along and I feel it stop or I feel that little bump or tick, I'm just going to kind of pull into them and start reeling. It's not a snap hook set. You're not trying to jerk them out of the lake like a jig or a frog. You just kind of load up on them, keep tension on them, and lean back, kind of almost like a Carolina rig reaction style bait or like a spinnerbait, and that kind of, a spinnerbait, crankbait, a big sweeping hook set is all you really need to drive it home. For me, 7.3, 7.4, 7.5 is the ideal length for a chatterbait rod. Short enough you can make accurate casts, skips around cover, stumps, laydowns, docks, presentations like that. Put it in little holes in the grass, pockets of pads. You want to be able to place this bait very accurately. So a 7.3 in that range rod is really good for me. But on the same time, the length is still that I can bomb this out, make long casts over boulder flats, grass flats, windy reeds, things like that, cover a lot of water, and still have the strength and the length of a rod to get a good hook set on a long cast. Plus, the 7.3 with the backbone of this heavy action rod allows me to control a big fish, have no issues controlling them, and if I want to boat swing them, I can. The other nice thing about a graphite rod is you're not limited to what you can use it for. I find this rod really excels for a lot of techniques like spinnerbaits, 4-inch swim baits, top waters, lots of other techniques. And because it's graphite, you can even use it for jigs, Senkos, bottom bouncing baits, Texas rigs, things like that. You're not limited to just using, only for moving baits. Like a glass rod, you can only use it for moving baits most likely, whereas this has more versatility. So if you're a kayak angler, a bank angler, angler with limited budget, or you just don't have space in your boat for 30 rods, or you don't want that many, having a multi-purpose rod that does a lot of techniques is a really nice option. Moving on to the reel. 7.2 to 1, 7 to 1 to 1, that range I find is ideal for chatterbaits. This SXLXT really packs a punch at that $129, $130 price point. Again, links down in the description below. But I feel like this reel really does a lot, super smooth, feels really sturdy at that $130 price point. It's got a dual brake system in it, which is really nice, so it gives you that little extra control for skipping and things like that and fishing it in the wind. Everything I need for $130, this SLXT delivers. Some people like to drop down to a 6.3 to 1. I don't really like that. When a shallow water, a fish comes up and runs at me, I like to be able to keep up with them. On the flip side, I wouldn't want to go up to 8 to 1 because I feel like I lose a little torque, and it's hard to slow roll and slow down enough with a chatterbait with 8 to 1. So for me, that 7.1 to 1, 7.2 to 1 is the perfect range for a chatterbait and moving baits like. Line, like I said before, right now, big game, 17 pounds on here, which is great around heavy cover, shallow, super shallow water. We want to be able to keep that bait up, where you're potentially going to catch a lot of fish on short string. They're going to hit close to the boat. You want a little more shock absorption. 17 to 20 pound mono is a really good option. Normally, I'm going to fish 16, 17, 18 pound fluorocarbon, more in open water around grass, things like that. I will drop down as low as 14 pound when I'm trying to slow roll it, fish it on deeper edges, or just get the bait down, or I'm in really clean water. Normally, almost all these applications I'll throw in a 3/8 or a 1/2 ounce jackhammer or Z-Man custom, or even a Super K Klaken. Those 3 baits pretty much do everything I need from a chatterbait standpoint, and this rod is really set up and does really well for both 3/8 and 1/2 ounce and appropriate size trailers. I got a whole video that I'll link at the end of this on selecting the perfect chatterbait trailer, but I do love this Arsenal Tactical Minnow in the 4.5 inch. It gets bit, it allows the bait to hunt, and it's pretty durable on the chatterbait. If you're looking for more economical rods with similar actions, here's 2 to consider. Look at the Fury 733C or the Dobyns Colt 734C. Both great odds, $80 to $120. I'll have links in the description down below. And if $130 SLX is a little too much, then maybe check out the straight SLX from Shimano that comes in right at $100. And then you should be able to put together a really nice chatterbait combo at about $200. If you love chatterbait fishing and need more great tips on selecting the perfect chatterbait trailer, make sure you check out this video coming up right here.